Have you come to destroy me, Obi-Wan? I will do what I must.
Oh, man.
There it is.
There it is.
I will do what I must.
What's going on, Force family? Welcome back to Star Wars, guys. A little different setup. We went virtual for this one. Uncle is out of town, but how could we have
you have? I mean, there's no way I'm gonna miss it.
No, you can't miss this episode.
This is like pandemic cast.
Right.
Right. This would have really helped us. I think this would have helped us a while back. We're just now figuring it out.
Yeah. So, I mean, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We appreciate it. As always, feel free to engage with us as we're going, as we're diving into this finale of the Kenobi series. We love the interaction. So if you want us to stop what we're doing and talk about a certain topic or a certain part of the show, let us know. Throw it in the comments. We'll throw your comment on the screen. We'll dive into it. So let us know what you want to discuss. Otherwise, we'll just dive right into the show. But before we do that, I just want to say thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It really helps us out. So we appreciate that. We normally start, guys, with what? The overall thoughts, right?
Well, first we go on the rails.
But first, we're actually going to start. We're going to start with the quickest tangent in the history of Star Wars.
Tangent in the history.
The quickest tangent,
guys.
Quick 1 minute story. I'll keep it under a minute.
Right.
We had on May 4th. So I've been meaning to bring this up on the podcast for a while now.
Yeah.
But I had I would say an embarrassing Star Wars interaction, and here's why it's embarrassing. My wife and I, Abigail and I, are in Costco, and we're walking around, and it's on May 4th. I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt, of course, which I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt most days. But the difference is usually when you're wearing a Star Wars shirt out in the public and I'm somewhere, maybe someone sees me at Target or something, tangent alert. Exactly. Usually someone might acknowledge or might say something, but they don't make a big deal of it. But one of the employees at Costco, when I was walking by, caught me off guard as I'm like looking for some specific food item, and sees my shirt and says, "Hey, may the Force be with you," and like waves at me, and I go, "Thank you," and it just kept walking. And Abigail literally goes, of all days, not in also with you. You couldn't even do any. You couldn't go, "Hello there." A million things you could have done. You, like the biggest dweeb in the world, just go like, it caught me so off guard that I just like reacted to like
thank you,
and I go, "Thank you," and I walk by and go, and Abigail goes,
that guy's like, I wonder if he's ever actually seen Star Wars before.
Who gave you that shirt and give it back to him now?
Exactly. He's like, this guy's wearing a shirt that he doesn't even know the most famous quote from Star Wars. "May the Force be with you" on May the 4th. He says this to me, and I go, "Thank you." And then the whole rest of the day, every couple of hours, I turn to Abigail and go,
I blew it.
What in the world?
That may have been the worst moment of my life. I've had a great life. That's the low moment.
You also a great opportunity to share the cast, tell them about Star Wars, guys. No, thank you.
Thank you. And I walk by and I go,
one of your millions of impressions? I mean, you could have thrown that out there.
I had nothing. I didn't even go, well, what have we here? Well, Costco worker. How about we fancy a nice game of sabacc? Nothing.
You don't know the power of the dark side.
That's fantastic.
So,
it's great and sad at the same time.
Yeah. Yes. It was great for my wife, who was laughing at me. It was sad.
So let me ask you this question. How many days in a row did you go back to Costco with a Star Wars shirt to try to tee it up?
Meet this guy?
Because now you're loaded, you go back and you can fix it.
Abigail can attest to this. We then are walking, and I'm looking for the guy. Because I hope that he says something. I'm like, if he gives me another shot. I start thinking of quotes in my head.
Track him down.
Give me another shot. I actually do love Star Wars. I have a podcast. I'm pretty much obsessed with it. Hello there. Nothing. That guy left and goes, "All right, boss, I'm taking my lunch break. I'm out of here." Just saw a fake Star Wars fan.
There's no Star Wars love on May the 4th in this place.
No, the only thing worse would have been if you said, "Hey there."
Yeah.
Hey there.
Hello, guy.
I've never seen a thing of Star Wars.
Thank you. Like a lot.
Thank you a lot.
Oh my
man.
God.
I see Joe's in the chat. Joe, what's going on? Let's go. Best
Hey,
Star Wars
Joe.
production ever. I don't know about that, but hey, we appreciate it.
Wow.
Joe did the
Appreciate it.
best impression of me last week. It was like, why am I even here? Because Joe,
Well,
I would say he did it better than me. He did.
to be
me
fair,
better
we
than me.
asked him to
did
take
it
your place
better
this week
than
as
you.
well, but
You couldn't make it. Conflicts. Yeah.
yeah.
Understandable. After that story, you guys are already. Well, let's see when Joe's available for the next few
checking the
weeks
list.
after that.
No, it was
rough.
That's
All right. On to Obi-Wan Kenobi. I
Obi-Wan.
hear there was a finale that we just watched.
There was
Apparently, I know we start with overall thoughts. Do we want to go around and do the usual overall thoughts, and then we'll dive into all these big moments?
Sure.
Uncle, want to lead us off?
Yeah,
Take it.
I made a huge error in the last podcast. I said that
I love
part
that. That's how we
5
start.
was the best television episode. Huge mistake. Part 6 was the best episode of Star Wars television.
To be fair, that's a
They're
great mistake.
Oh man, unbelievable. I
So
had
good.
tears again for multiple reasons. It was exceptional. It answered for me the biggest questions. How do we get Kenobi?
Oh man.
How does Darth Vader stop hunting this
Yeah.
obsession? How does that change?
And just in such a perfect way.
Yeah, totally
I
makes
love
sense.
it.
Great.
We'll
Totally.
dive into all those
more
answers.
about that, but
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it. Loved it.
Man.
Favorite. And I wish it was longer. It felt it went by so fast.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
It went by fast, but I also thought like they got the story.
So
they covered exactly. They told what they wanted to tell. It covered everything.
I loved how early into the
episode.
Yeah, I loved how early into the episode we got into the fight.
Oh, they were there.
Oh, like it was. I'm glad the fight was not brief. Like I know we've all been leading up to this, and it's one of those things where Star Wars is promoting it. Rematch of the century. We're talking about it, and even in my head, I'm like, I mean, I've never really thought about an additional, like coming into the series. I never really thought about an additional fight. I definitely wasn't against it, but I was thinking, does it need to top old stuff?
Right.
We had the old, and we'll get into the specifics, but the fight blew me away. The episode blew me away. Uncle, the things you're talking about, as impressed as I was with the fight, which was some of the best Star Wars fighting I've had. If we do a new ranking of our lightsabers, that's going to be near the top. It's just for emotional weight, all of that, and we'll deep dive into that a little bit later in this podcast episode. But overall thoughts were the same as Uncle's. I told Abigail this morning, because I watched it late last night, and then around lunchtime I watched it with her today, and excuse me, she was asking me my thoughts. How was it? And I said, well, bear with me here, because I know you probably think I say this just about every other week about like, this is the best one, but I've said it multiple times. And I said, this is the way I prefaced it. I said, now I know that I've said before, this is the best one. This is my favorite. You might start to just think that whatever I've seen most recently is the favorite. That's not the case. Looking at the whole scope of this series now, and all scope of Mando, Boba Fett. I love Mando. I love Mando so much. Yeah. I love Boba Fett. I love the entire Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Are there episodes I like more than others? Absolutely.
Sure.
But this episode is my favorite episode of Star Wars television. And there hasn't been, including Luke's return in Mando, including seeing the new deep fake Luke doing the stuff with Grogu, all that stuff had me mesmerized. Ahsoka, Mando, all these amazing, all the Boba Fett stuff, climbing out of the Sarlacc. There's so many things it's hard to even remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Nothing. Mando pulling off the mask, that was emotional. I have never been this emotional watching an episode of Star Wars television. I've been pretty emotional watching. There's some moments of Rise of Skywalker when Han shows up that it was waterworks. But watching, there were multiple moments in this episode, but seeing the and we'll get into it, the interactions where I mean, Ewan McGregor may be the greatest actor on the planet. I don't even know at this point. Like what he's able to do.
His whole the whole fight scene, the dialogue was his.
But that dialogue when they're talking, I'm tearing
And
up.
we'll-
Later in the day, I'm tearing up to watching other people's reaction videos of the same scene I've already seen, and
I've
I'm
watched
watching
like
it
10 times.
and it hits them, and I'm getting emotional to it. But it was my favorite episode of the series, my favorite episode of Star Wars television so far, and just felt like they could not have stuck the landing better
Right.
on this show. Not that I thought like, oh, it's struggling, they need a strong ending. I was loving the show throughout. It was just like, it almost felt as if like when I was watching Breaking Bad of like, this is going great. I just want them to finish out on a high
Can
note.
you
Not that
finish the way you
can
Yeah.
you finish going
True.
that
Right.
way. And not
Right.
necessarily comparing the two shows, but I thought that they hit a grand slam on the finale. I just absolutely loved it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely agree. I think it was my favorite live action Star Wars like television episode as well. Does everybody feel that way? Probably not. Are there different shows catered towards different audiences? Sure. We talked about this last week. I think we already are seeing some nostalgia with Mando coming back. When we got his
Right.
cameo in the Boba Fett stuff, people are like, oh, that was the best episode, because there's already some nostalgia with Mando. And there's a lot of people that got, fully dove in and got interested in Star Wars because of Mando. So
Yeah.
seeing this connection with the prequels might not be as nostalgic, might not be as emotional for some people that really like. I grew up essentially with that prequel era in school and things like that. So for me watching this, it's like, this is Hayden Christensen getting to see his face behind Vader. I think I maybe even mentioned a video, and we talked a little bit about this previously, but what this series has really done for me that I like a lot, it's allowed me to really connect Anakin and Vader more seamlessly as the same person. Like, we've always known, obviously, they're the same person, but even mentally watching the show, I've always had a hard time because I'm like, they're so different that it's easy to just see he's one person, he's a completely separate person. And they kind of portray that.
One sounds like James Earl Jones, one sounds like there's reasons to that it's hard to sometimes make the bridge. Yeah.
And this show has really done a good job of showing that they are two different people, but they come from the same person. Right. I think we get a lot of that dialogue with the fight in this episode of showing they're the same, but they're also very two different. When he says, I killed Anakin, and we'll get into this stuff, but it's showing those two different, completely different people, but that they are one and the same at the same time. But I really like that connection. That's what the show has really done for me, I think, is bridge that gap, kind of make that connection a lot more clear and easier to see and visualize, because we got this connective piece of the story.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. There were so many things as we kind of maybe start to dive into some of the specifics that surprised me. I think looking at the series as a whole, if I were to step back a little bit, there was so much of this series that delivered, not saying that us as fans need to always get exactly what we want, but there were big surprises in this series. And then there were also things that were like, yes, that's exactly what I was kind of hoping we would get from the show, but they did it in a way that was better than I could have imagined it. Or like, when we hear Obi-Wan and Vader, we think, all right, well, they're both older, but they're both probably more powerful in the Force. What would that look like? What's the emotion? I said, I think since our first podcast episode, as cool as the fight's going to be, I'm much more interested in what's the dialogue going to be. What's that dialogue? And to me, there are some amazing moments in the fight. I mean, the Obi-Wan raising up the rocks like this gives me chills every time I see it. Also, just small little side note, the way this episode is shot is the most cinematic of any of the episodes, where I think that it is a fair, not necessarily a criticism, but it's a fair, maybe a critique of the show that we've talked before about. Sometimes you can tell by just the way that shots are framed or way the stormtroopers are lined up when they're all in a cave, is that they're shooting on the volume. There's a reason why there's 12 stormtroopers and not 1,000, or there's a reason why they only brought 2 ships, because that fits on the stage. But then they have this fight on this epic rock moon planet, and they're having these aerial shots like through the towers of stone and rock. And
even the aerial shot on Vader at the end of the fight, yelling out for Obi-Wan.
The first shot of Vader walking off of his shuttle And it's shot. I love how it's shot intentionally dark too. Like we already got the Mustafar, which well, it's dark in
Very
tone,
dark.
and there's dark. There's the lava that's lighting up and those things. This is a dark battle, and it's really the lightsabers are kind of your only light. But right when Vader walks off the shuttle, and it just pans, and Obi-Wan is just small in the background, and you see these two foes looking at each other.
Yeah.
It then goes back to this side angle, and right when I was watching just the first time, and I think other people have said it now too, I'm like, it looks like concept art, like in the best way possible. It looks like a mural, like someone painted Vader this shot of the two of them looking at each other, and then that goes on like 100 more times throughout. And it was also interesting. And then I'll give up my time to let someone else talk, but I will yield my time. Another thing, just upon watching and rewatching, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but it's the way they're, I do think it's intentional, the way that like the bodies move. It felt almost like when they're actually fighting. It looked different than what they've done before of like even when Owen's fighting with the rod, and the rod gets close to the camera and comes, like there's this like distortion thing that's going on. It looks really cool. It actually reminded me of and some of the movies are kind of hit or miss of Zack Snyder. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of like this Batman versus Superman or Justice League style of fighting, where it's like intentionally
almost bird's eye to the camera and then comes
it's like
back.
and it's almost like intentionally graphic novel, comic booky in the best way possible, of like, whoa, this looks like not just a person, but it's like it makes him look mythical. It's got this really cool element to it where it doesn't look fake, but they're moving like people who are stronger than the average person, because they've got this power and they're using the Force. But there's so many things that are the different angles that I was wearing this shirt, this concept art Vader shirt. Actually, he actually appears like this a little bit while he's fighting, where it's like it's angled down. Like there's little parts that I think it is intentional, where Vader looks even a little bit different when he's fighting, like as a monster. But gosh, I mean, we'll go on and on about specifics, but that's just a few of the things. The way it looked was just, I thought it looked so,
I will say,
so good.
When you mentioned the ship coming down, they tricked me. When he said, "Ready my ship," the first thing I thought was, "Oh, we're going to see his TIE fighter." Vader's TIE fighter. Oh, we didn't. It's not that big of a deal. But they tricked me because I was like, "Oh, his ship, like his
ship."
But they went more.
They went Tidarian. They went more Return of the Jedi. Exactly.
Which is fine, but they definitely tricked me. That was my first thought when he said "my ship." I was like, "Oh, we're gonna see the TIE fighter."
Maybe he saves the TIE. He saves the TIE just for
aerial combat or something.
Just for trench runs, specifically for trench runs.
What?
Yeah. Exactly. Whoa! Spin out.
Well, I made a big decision during this show.
Oh.
And I shared this with Nate and Joe, and I read an article about this, and I made a big decision that I'm actually happy and comfortable, more comfortable now when things don't line up. I'm good. I'm good with that. In fact,
I listened to the cast when you were talking about this. Yeah.
It's not that I try to avoid it. I embrace it, because the freedom of putting square blocks into all the square holes and triangles.
It's almost like you're just checking boxes.
Yeah, I feel like we're
it limits the creative storytelling.
That's right. The story becomes the servant of keeping things connected rather than the other way around.
And we saw George do that.
He did that because and now I appreciate it more. He let the characters drive the story, and then if things landed a little askew, you just deal with it. I mean, there's a lot of things about movies that, I mean, Superman can't fly.
I'd say
good with that.
So Superman. Wait, sorry. I want to get on record. You said Superman can't what? I'm saying this to
that's a great episode of Big Bang Theory when they're talking about the physics of Superman, and you got to go look it up. It's funny. Anyway. But my decision was, I think it's sound that I'm comfortable with the things that don't line up. And I went back and I watched, because we talk about Leia. What does Leia now think about it? Like, what does she think about Obi-Wan in 4? Right?
Yeah.
So I went back and watched it, and I was like, oh, okay. Leia ran out, saw him fighting Vader in episode 4, stood at the edge of the Millennium Falcon and watched Vader swing through and Obi-Wan disappear, and then got on the Falcon and consoled Luke and said there was nothing you could do. That was it. There's no like,
Yeah.
When I was a little girl, we had this nothing.
Right.
And I'm totally fine with that, because what's the alternative? The alternative is Leia doesn't know him. Then we lose all of this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm totally fine with that.
True.
Little
Yeah, that's a good
incongruity,
point.
so that I get the gift of this whole Leia interaction this whole time, which to me has been the highlight. And I love the fact that, and I keep going back to this because I just watched the end of Clone Wars, season 6, that is, where I talk about fear and the dark side being the same.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Obi-Wan's trajectory in this whole thing has been from fear to courage. And the one who has driven him there is
Little
Leia. Even they made it so obvious. They even made Lola a token of courage. He said, "Oh, I could use that." Maybe.
Right.
And there it is. So
I couldn't take away or hold a little girl's droid or whatever he said.
That's right. So Lola became this symbol of courage. Like she gave it to him because it's giving other people the courage. So her fearlessness literally saved Obi-Wan.
And what happened when things were looking wrong, when things were looking, dark, they're about to get raided in the cave, Lola turned. Lola was that symbolic,
and everybody was terrified
of like everyone's terrified. Lola's also here. It's kind of paralleling that idea of there's fear now driving in. They're worried if they'll escape. It's kind of amping up. Lola kind of parallels that.
Lola became a symbol of that, and when that went with Obi-Wan, literally he saw it, and that's right. There's that.
Some more. So sticking with Leia too. This is one of these things where I don't really have warning. A little bit snarky Mike coming here.
Snarky Mike.
This is where I'm a little impatient with some of the people that will give these just blanket statements of like, I hear this all the time from Solo. The movie Solo used to get this critique a lot of like, oh, it was a good movie. We didn't need it. We didn't need that. I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, we also don't need Return of the Jedi. Like they decided to make it, and thankfully they did. We didn't need Empire Strikes Back. It wasn't even intended to be 2 movies. George made his 1 movie, and then he made the next, and then he made the next. And when I say that, that doesn't mean like it doesn't add anything. Obviously, Empire Strikes Back, by most people's accounts, is one of, if not the best Star Wars movie of all time. But this thing of like, we need this or we didn't need that. I get kind of what the idea is of saying like, maybe what I'm getting at here is with this show, I've heard already some people say like, I thought it was fine. I still stand by, we didn't need it, which essentially means I would rather erase everything I just learned about these characters when what I think Deborah Chow and all the writers who are involved in the show did so brilliantly, especially in the finale, but all the things leading up to it, because I don't separate the two at all. I saw some people who were even like, well, thank goodness the finale was so good. The whole show is fantastic.
What?
The finale was the climax. It was the peak that I thought was the best of the best. Yeah, 5 was fantastic, and then 6 just grand slam to walk off home run to win the game. But with the character of Leia, this is a character who we've known for a long time, who all 3 of us have been fans of Leia, but we have other characters that we're like, oh, she wouldn't be my favorite Star Wars character. I really like Leia.
Yeah.
This show, I mean, she's near the top of my favorite Star Wars character of all time now.
She's a hero, legitimately,
and she definitely did other things, obviously, in the original trilogy and in some of
sequels.
The sequels, for sure. Yeah. She's done heroic things for since forever, since we knew her. Get in the garbage chute, Flyboy. She's the self-rescuing princess. Hero. That was her thing. But I love the way they connected all the way through the end of this. And Uncle, what you were just getting at about her importance to Obi-Wan. And this is why Deborah Chow and the writers threw us a curveball that we were like, oh, we thought this is going to be the Luke story, but we already know the Luke and Obi connection as far as we're going later. Brilliant. Looking back now as a whole, that it's Leia that's the one who's going to get Obi-Wan off the bench and back into the game reluctantly, because Bail tries to get him to, and he says, find someone else. Like, I don't. And then shows up and like essentially forces him, you got to get back out there. And he says in that first episode, And then in the first and second episode, I can't remember which one he has the line, but he says, it's the first episode. He says, she's just important as he is. And what we think initially to the audience is like, yes, she is, because we know what she means to the rebellion. We know what she does later on. We know how important she is to Luke. Just by the end of the series, you realize, no, she's just important because of what she means to you, Ben. You don't know what's coming. She is the only reason you find your humanity and your confidence and your courage, because you're crippled by fear. You're crippled by this self-doubt of this fear of failure, this all of these, this guilt. And it's not Bale, it's not Luke, it's not Owen, it's not Beru who gets him out there. It's not Yoda or even Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon doesn't intervene until the very end.
Yeah.
It's his connection with Leia throughout this show that repeatedly, over and over and over, is the reason he transforms back into the Obi-Wan of old, but into an even wiser, stronger.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anyone would argue with the fact that I think that the Obi-Wan that we have now, there is no previous version of Obi-Wan that has now lived through. Like, he is now in the best place he's been in, as far as we've never seen him this powerful and this connected to the Force before.
We've seen him in this series.
The arrogance is a little bit gone too, because when he was younger, he loved the showmanship and all of that a little bit more. But now there's this humility, because Alec Guinness didn't come off as overly cocky or anything like that. He's got a little snark to him. He gives it to Han when Han needs to be put in his place a little bit. Like, you never heard of Millennium Falcon? Should I have? Like, just his little, like, just playing with him. But I love and this is kind of what I was getting at. I love the line by Bale in their final interaction in this finale, when he's talking about, like, I don't think I could ever repay you for everything you've done. And he looks back at Leia and she's already done that. And that's it. Like, that is the heart of this show. It of course it's Obi-Wan and Vader. Yeah. But the only reason we get the Obi-Wan who can help Luke, who saves the galaxy with the help of Leia and Han and the original big three that we know,
can take down Maul,
is because Obi-Wan gets back in the game because of young Leia. And then, don't even get me into one of the scenes that made me cry, of him talking about the traits of his mother, of her mother, and the traits of the father. Was so just but Leia, home run. I
mean,
go ahead, Nate.
I was just gonna say, going off of that, in this one series, this 6-episode limited series, we see Obi-Wan at his weakest to Obi-Wan at his strongest. I mean, like you were saying, we haven't seen him this strong. Even Vader says your strength is back. Your strength has returned, but your weakness is still there, or whatever that line is.
And it's weakness from Vader's point of view.
Exactly.
You still have compassion
You're
not
but his
ruthless
strength
yet.
Clearly, and I was talking about this earlier, his physical force ability, it all stemmed from his mental state, which is what Qui-Gon touches on at the end of the episode. It's like, you weren't able to tap into this stuff because you weren't ready to see. You weren't ready mentally. You weren't in the state to be able to do this. It was always there. I think he was talking about everything, not just himself. Not just himself as like, oh, you couldn't see me because, you weren't ready to see me. I think he meant that, but also meant on touching on all of his force ability, everything. He has pushed everything down and pushed it all aside to try and, live out in hiding and just watch over Luke. And he couldn't. It took him a while to get that strength, from episode to episode. We see it grow, but he wasn't able to just tap right back into it because he wasn't mentally in that state of mind to believe really he could do that. He wasn't comfortable. It all came from the moment he realized that he himself was not in charge of Anakin's downfall, and that the Anakin he knows is actually gone. Once he got closure, then everything clicked, and he's like, all right, I'm free.
Well, absolutely. I think Deborah Chow was channeling. If you go deep here, she's channeling Filoni, because remember we've talked a lot about dual debates, and the idea of Qui-Gon's teaching versus Obi-Wan's teaching.
Sure,
Qui-Gon was teaching, and he's also said it was compassion that Anakin was lacking. It's compassion that actually helped Luke redeem Vader at the end. And it was actually what Obi-Wan was learning, was how to tap into because at the beginning of this, he's fearful, but he's also cold.
Yeah.
He's withdrawn.
He's like,
doesn't
He's
trust.
back. He doesn't
No
let
trust
any
for
emotion
anyone.
out. Everything is like no emotion. And
very
at the
cold.
end, he's very emotional
Yeah.
towards everyone. And so
Yes.
it's for him, it's been a path away from fear to courage, but also a path away from distance and apathy to love and compassion. And as he moved back to that, I think those are the things. That's the weakness that Vader was talking about, his compassion. But it's also the thing that, I mean, think about it when he's at the bottom of those rocks, right? He's at the bottom of the rocks, and he's literally using the force to hold them back. And he is, it is giving away. And as he's remembering all of the things that are weighing on him, the one thing that spurs him on are the children. Right? And that's what and Leia specifically, but Luke's in there, but that's what inspires him. It's his love, not his knowledge of the Force, not any of those things. It's his love for the children that inspires him, because he still has work to do, and it's about them. So he was able to push through.
And the way that's presented,
Leia
Uncle, too.
built that in. I mean, it's just
I
so
love
great.
how intentional they were with making that clear too, because what first flashes through his mind when he's down there, the dialogue first is all of the negative stuff. That's right. It's where an Anakin or a Maul or a Vader, said Anakin, but Vader, any of them would have. They heard the negativity. I lash out in anger, and now I'm going.
Right.
He hears all of the. You should have killed me when you had the chance.
And you see the rocks closing in.
I
am
what you have made me, and he just stays steady.
You hear even the prequel lines.
It's almost like the bad thoughts are coming. I'm lit, like the fear is there, but I don't give into it. And I keep listening and I wait, and then I remember what my purpose is. Boom, it's Leia.
That was
the children, and then that's when he goes.
I
just love it.
So
love
good.
that so much. And then that's why I heard someone online too ask, like, "Oh, Obi-Wan's fighting this, like he comes out really powerful. Is he fighting in rage or anger? Not at all. It's this. He knows his purpose. He's coming. He's fighting. Talking about peace and purpose is the way Luke went out, but Obi-Wan has never been more sure of the mission. And he doubted the mission at the beginning of the series. He's had doubts in himself. He knows the mission. He also knows what he needs to do right now in front of him. He knows this is the ultimate threat to the mission right here. And even though it's my brother, I need to find out all of that.
Right.
It's just, it's just I love the way that was handled.
And if you don't think Rian Johnson is important to Star Wars, quick shout out. What did Rose say? What did she say? We don't win by killing what we hate. We win by saving what we love. That's what inspired Obi-Wan in that moment. It wasn't fighting what he hated. It was saving what he loved that allowed him to push those rocks away and step up.
I want to touch too on what Uncle had mentioned earlier of Obi-Wan, like the kind of Obi-Wan's character arc and journey on this. It's almost the opposite of how he views Anakin. So from Obi-Wan's perspective, he views himself opposite of Anakin. For instance, beginning of the show, what's he tell everybody? That's not me anymore. I'm not the Obi-Wan you knew. So he sees himself as a different person. I'm different. I am no longer this person. His journey then is realizing I'm still the same person. I'm not different. I'm still the same person. Meanwhile, in his mind, he's seeing Anakin the opposite way. He hears Anakin's alive and he's holding on hope that Anakin is the same person.
The same person. Right.
Only to realize at the end, he gets closure by realizing he's not the same person. Their character journey in this series is the complete opposite. You know, I just think it's very interesting the way they intentionally show that, and how not even just showing it visually, but the literal dialogue throughout the series is I'm not the same person. And then Vader is I killed Obi-Wan or I killed Anakin, showing the two different people and Obi-Wan believing that he is different than he was.
Yeah, Ben becoming used less and Obi-Wan becoming used more, even to the point where Leia is now embracing Obi-Wan. That's finding himself.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I know we had some big topics. So do we want to dive into just the elephant in the room, I guess, the rematch of the century, and just kind of take 5-10 minutes just breaking down the fight?
Yeah, Reva versus Owen. It was
well, Reva versus Luke.
Reva versus
Didn't last
unconscious
long.
hit his head on a rock, Luke. Yep.
I thought that was a rematch from 40 years. Yeah.
No,
20 days in the making.
Here's the thing. We're told about, we all kind of hyped up. The one thing about the series we were all expecting was the rematch of the century, quote unquote, that we were kind of told, right? So we all kind of
it's kind of what Kathy had said,
rematch.
yeah.
Aside from that, we didn't really know what to expect other than the expectation that we'd get that. Even flashbacks and stuff were still kind of speculation, but everyone pretty much assumed we were getting this rematch. The first thing I want to say about the rematch is I was not going into this show, and no way was I expecting any of their fights to be similar to the prequels, to be like Mustafar, because Anakin doesn't move the same. He's not the same character. He's Vader. Vader is much more tapped into his force ability and showing off his strength, whereas Anakin's side from Mustafar was all about how skilled he was with the lightsaber and all that stuff.
And Obi-Wan's 10 years older now, and
right, they're older.
All that, yeah.
So in no way was I expecting them to go do backflips and all that stuff. So put that aside. Wasn't expecting that part to be the same. That being said, I think this rematch of the century was arguably just as good as Mustafar fight from every aspect. Mustafar was fantastic choreography, probably the best choreography, lightsaber skilled fighting you could argue throughout the entire saga. This actually had a lot more movement. Vader was moving a lot more than I expected. But it also highlighted the strength, the force ability, while throwing in the emotion in between the fight, not just, Mustafar, where the emotion, a lot of it comes at the very end of the scene, but just in the middle of the fight, with them kind of walking away, coming to terms, the dialogue, kind of having a break when Obi-Wan gets, Vader drops the ground with the force or whatever and makes him sink.
Right on the video game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I just thought all of it was very next level, more than I was even expecting, exceeded my expectations, I guess.
It was a combination of great choreography, great new, not necessarily new force ability, but creative ways of using the force. Of like, we've seen the levitation of rocks. We've never seen the pelting of, we've seen
the White Walker,
the Obi-Wan, the Obi-Wan shot where he's just sitting there and like the camera's like shaking, and he's got all, and then just, we've never seen Vader look so overmatched before. Vader's curled, just getting pelted.
No, I will say he took some hits like a champ.
Took some hits, but broke right after that, the fight, as similar to someone who takes a lot of hits in boxing, he doesn't make it out of the round. It's hard to keep going after that. It doesn't last too much longer.
Yeah.
But
going off that real quick,
the choreography though too. Yeah. Oh, what were you saying?
Just real quick, going off what you just said, we got some chat stuff. In the chat said Obi-Wan is usually a defensive fighter, but was a bit more offensive in this battle. You're right, definitely. I think part of that came with realizing, coming to grips with the closure with Anakin and realizing his purpose in protecting, Luke and Leia, and finally having to try to take on Vader.
Yeah, I loved the the combination of the Vader does a force boulder trip. Like he used the boulder and takes out Obi-Wan's legs. I'm like, dang, that was a little slide tackle. That was a soccer move right there. It was a little slide tackle of the leg, takes him out. They're using the big, it was kind of a Dooku move of like a big heavy object catch, like the Dooku Yoda type of a thing.
Yeah.
But the tower kind of falls and then Vader just takes it and easily throws it away.
I love that they did that too.
So cool.
Even in a match where Vader is bested essentially in the end, they still showed off his force ability is just still next level. Now, obviously, Obi-Wan they showed off by seeing for the first time effortless force ability from Obi-Wan in that scene with the rocks. Other than that, everything, even just tilting the tower, showed effort, whereas Vader just catches it, tosses it, calls him weak. Even though he lost, I guess, essentially in that fight, they still wanted to show off how much stronger, I guess, he is, how easy it is for him to just catch things and throw them.
Yeah.
I was,
awesome.
yeah, I agree. Blown away. And I think we've talked about even the fight in the third part 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really see this even So Obi-Wan has been on a transition here. I see it from the beginning to the end of the fight. That Obi-Wan's transition starts with this guy, with the fingers out guy, right?
Yeah.
And remember, we're heading to the Obi-Wan of late, but also in the middle there, we see the Obi-Wan that faces Maul.
We get the Twin
Where it's
Sons
not
episode.
a long
Rebels.
drawn out thing. It's a quick reactive thing. And I think what we saw in Mustafar was straight up saber, 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 saber.
Yeah.
In this, they're getting older, so they're playing off of each other's moves more. It's reactive more, and they're also much more about the Force, a lot more.
Yeah.
And we saw Obi-Wan using on Vader what Vader eventually uses on Luke in Empire Strikes Back, where he's pulling in things from the side.
Mm-hmm.
He's lifting rocks, and Obi-Wan's throwing rocks at him, and Vader does that with things in Episode 5 to Luke.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can't get away from the fact that Obi-Wan's redemption, like Obi-Wan was looking for resolution, and of all places, it comes from Vader, and Vader meant it as a way, as a sign of strength to say, "You didn't kill me.
Yeah,
you didn't kill me."
I want to break down this dialogue because
right.
Yeah.
And in that moment, what he did accidentally was relieve Obi-Wan of the guilt, because Obi-Wan's like, "You're right.
You're right.
You did this yourself." Right?
You have done this yourself.
And at the same time, Anakin was trying to take back the strength, saying, "I'm not your failure. I control my fate. I'm the one who says."
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny. I actually
let's get into this.
Let's dive into this, because I actually took that line two different ways, and the more I think about it, I think you can take it two different ways. I think one is exactly what you're saying right now, Uncle, which is, I am not, where he says, "I'm sorry." He apologizes, which, by the way, is extremely emotional. And then he says, "I am not your failure, Obi-Wan," which my first initial thought was, oh, he's saying, "I'm not your failure," as in, like, I'm not a failure. What I've become is much better than you could ever think. Like, than I could have asked for. I am Darth Vader. I am going to destroy you. So that's the first way I kind of took that. And then I heard Mike, mention some of this other perspective too, and I'll let him explain it. But then I was like, oh, you can take it that way too.
Yeah, I think that the way when we were talking about things that we hoped or things we were excited for in this series, one of the, like I said at the beginning of this cast, at the top of my list was, well, multiple things. One was, Uncle, you've already hit on it. We'll talk about it a little bit more as far as the resolution of why do they not continue chasing after each other after this? And I think they handled that so well in this show, and actually gave an answer that really made sense that I didn't see coming. But one of the biggest things I wanted to see was the dialogue. This Obi-Wan once thought as you did, these lines, how would that be? And I liked that it wasn't just a straight up like, listen, like, come back. Like, it wasn't like he's just coming him to come back. Yeah. It was different, but it also played on all these parallels of, I mean, Obi-Wan says then my friend is truly dead. And that's textbook with Luke. Well, then my father is truly dead. It's the same. They use a lot of these parallels with the lines. There was even the line coming off the shuttle before Obi-Wan hits the pose. And it's the
as soon as I saw that, I didn't even finish the episode. I immediately tweeted. I was like, the stance, the line, he's in the
stance. But that line, and I'm leading to what you were getting at, Nate, but talking about another parallel there with the dialogue, the Twilight of the Apprentice episode in Rebels, the season 2 finale of Vader versus Ahsoka. There's so much there.
Man.
I mean, down to the splitting of the mask, the in and out voice. They clearly use that as a little bit of a template, and then change some things obviously to fit this story. But there was a lot there that really paved the way for this episode. But even the dialogue there, then you will die, instead of like on Mustafar, it was you will try, and then he does into the backflip and they start going after the line of I will do what I must. This was a little more forceful. Obi-Wan says, I will do what I must, and like immediately hits the stance, and then he says, then you will die, which is exactly what Matt Lanter's
tells Ahsoka.
Yeah, that's what the animated Anakin tells tells Ahsoka. It's the same thing he's saying to Obi-Wan here, which is great because I love the way that kind of lines up canon-wise. But the way this is shot, where the mask is split, these two are talking. I'm crying my eyes out because I'm sitting there watching this.
That's canon.
That's canon. That's canon. That's, I think George Lucas said in the making of documentary of Phantom Menace,
in the script,
he said someday Mike will be the key to all
the
this.
Star Wars guys.
Keep crying.
Yep.
But the way it's shot, where once the mask is split and they're having this dialogue, the blue saber of Kenobi is lighting up Anakin's face. And this in and out, I do think the way that it's shot and the way the vocally of the Anakin voice, the Vader voice, is to also show us some of what's coming through is a little bit of the soul of Anakin and a little bit of the soul of Vader. And the way that it comes out initially, my initial take of his first couple of lines when he's talking to when Obi-Wan is
I'm not your failure.
Yeah, when Obi-Wan's telling him, I'm sorry, Anakin, and he's tearing up, I'm sorry for everything. He then gets what feels like a heartfelt little bit of closure from what feels like Anakin coming through.
Yeah.
And there's blue light on his face, and it feels a little bit of that Anakin light coming through of him saying, what was the exact line?
I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan.
I'm not your failure, Obi-Wan. And then he gets, you didn't kill. And he's like, his voice starts even slowing down. It sounds like he can't survive with this mask off for too long. He's like, you did not kill Anakin Skywalker. And then the red light hits him.
And his face tilts.
The eye goes little up. Smile too. And it says, I did,
yeah.
The same way I will destroy you. And then it starts going. And the way that you can take that is either a little bit of, like you were saying, Uncle, either way, Obi-Wan gets the closure he needs. Whether it's a heartfelt message from whatever remains
left in Anakin
of his long lost friend, telling him, hey, listen, I understand that I did this. This is my choice led me to this. This is not something you need to be burdened with. And that's what it feels like initially. But then if you look at it from just Vader's perspective, Obi-Wan gets the closure he needs because his friend is no longer there, at least to his knowledge. He can't get him out. And the language of I am what I am who remains, or I am what remains, talking about Anakin Skywalker is dead, I am who remains. But the dialogue where he then, if it's from the Vader perspective, like you were talking about a little bit, Nate and Uncle, I like this of him feeling like you don't get the credit for this. Like, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker.
I did that. Darth Vader did that. Yeah,
I did that. I turned him into the most powerful. I turned us into the most powerful being. You don't get credit for that. Like, stop the pity party. Like, if it's just coming from Vader, there is no compassion from Vader.
It's a very Gollum Smeagol.
He's like, you don't even get to this thing you think's a tragedy. You don't get to claim that, because on my side it's a victory, and you're not claiming that victory. I did that.
Yeah.
And so it's just such this interesting dynamic of multiple different ways to interpret that. With the light, it kind of makes you think, like, is this a little bit of Anakin coming through?
Yeah.
Obi-Wan gets the closure either way that he takes it. He knows, okay, this is enough that either I'm not feeling guilty for this anymore, because either Anakin just told me, like, he recognizes kind of what he's done, and I don't need to feel this, and I feel closure, or Vader, who is completely consumed, my old friend, has literally killed him. Anakin, which is also gives more credence to it, gives
what Obi-Wan says,
a little more validity to the certain point of view type of a line when he tells him that Darth Vader.
It wasn't just Obi-Wan's words; it was Vader's words. Yeah.
It doesn't feel like much of a stretch. It doesn't feel like, sure, Obi-Wan could have said, and now he was using your dad's body, and he was your dad, like this type of a thing. But the person he knew, to his knowledge, he's not lying to Luke and thinks that Anakin is still out there. He thinks Anakin is gone. Just like someone completely possessed or taken over the person he knew is dead. And the way that was handled, emotional, I thought it lined up with the things that talk about. We don't always want to, like I think you said, great, Uncle. We don't want to shove things into a box and feel like it has to be this. or has to fit into this perfectly. But they also took these liberties and did things, and I'm like, well, dang, that actually lines up pretty well. Like,
it lines
it
up.
didn't
If
feel
anything,
better
they
than I
lined
thought.
up. If
Yeah,
anything,
yeah.
they lined up a lot of things more than I thought they would.
a lot,
Way more.
a
Yeah.
lot.
Way more.
And
Yeah.
we'll get to more of. We can
Well,
even go back to the Leia thing. That Obi-Wan tells Leia
Yeah.
before he leaves is great too, because that answered
Yeah.
a big question of what I had as well.
Yeah.
But the
I
fight
think
just
what
brilliant.
what made Anakin so angry in that moment, and this is why I think it was meant to take back the power again, was pity. So he's fighting Vader, and there's a mutual respect, and there's a little bit of there's a battle there.
Who's
There's
gonna
a
best
back and
who?
forth. But as soon as he sees Anakin's face, he tears up in pity.
Yeah.
Oh, this
Like I
poor,
feel bad
wretched
for you.
man. Look how
Yeah.
weak you are. Look at how you're all deformed and ugly. And I took that away from you, and I'm so sorry I turned you into this weak, frail creature.
That makes Vader that much
And
more mad.
that is the opposite of what that drives him deeper. Actually, I think he hated him more in that moment than maybe any other time. So Obi-Wan's giving compassion in that moment, and it's genuine, but Anakin sees it as pity.
Yeah.
And that's, you don't even know.
Right.
And he's been defeated. It's like the worst. It's just
He's
twice.
And
he's not even going to kill him. Like, he's not even giving the justification of killing him.
What did they
He's
say
gonna
in the
leave him
flashbacks?
again.
Which also
Exactly.
gives almost a little bit of like, listen, I'm not even going to finish you off again. I'm going to leave you
You're
here.
too weak
Right.
now. You're too weak to fight. I'm not
even though Darth Vader, we know, would go on to commit many atrocities, it is almost a sign as if, like you said, Uncle, of like, in Vader's perspective, Obi-Wan's like, similar to kind of how I didn't chase Maul after a while. I was like, I'm not worried about what you're going to do to me. You're not going to best me. Like,
I'm no longer worried. I'm free.
From Anakin's perspective, that's the last thing in the world he wants to feel is that now I've been defeated by my master, and my master actually no longer thinks I'm even really a challenge for him.
Pities me. Like, I'm a
just, he pities me.
He feels bad for me. And I think it's interesting too, going off that is what did we see? What did Anakin say in the flashbacks of them training? Mercy doesn't defeat an enemy, Master.
No.
And what did he do here?
Right.
Exactly what you're saying. It was almost more like a jab that he just walks away because he's showing mercy to him and just like, I'm out of here.
And I love that I love going back to that flashback, Nate, from part 5, that it is of the eventual mercy of Anakin Skywalker saving Luke, saving his son, that defeats the Emperor. And
that defeats
ultimately,
Vader.
At least for a span of about 30 years, rids the galaxy of its ultimate evil. So, it's,
there's one other thing I thought about. There was another element of this I hadn't even considered. Like Nate, when he buried him under the rock, I was like, oh, thinks he's dead. It's gonna be, and I thought that feels a little.
I thought the same thing. I thought I don't think
that's walking away a little quick. Yeah,
I had not considered the fact that Vader would not, and of course we know the Emperor took that out of his hands, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe Vader is afraid of Obi-Wan because he bested him on Mustafar and didn't kill him. He bested him again now. How is he going to explain this when he comes back? And he says, Obi-Wan's alive. You didn't kill him? Well, no. How do you explain this to the Grand Inquisitor? How do you explain this? So then Anakin, so now Vader has to go. Is he going to go again? Is he going to go seek him out again and lose again? No. So I believe when the Emperor says, I think Vader is relieved. Like, I don't.
He means nothing to me.
Let's move on. I couldn't best him at my strongest when I was with the saber, with the lightsaber, and I couldn't best him now at my strongest with the Force. What can I do to kill this guy? I don't really want to. I don't want to pursue him anymore because it doesn't lead to anything but hurt. It makes me look bad.
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about that Emperor moment?
Yeah.
So
we'll tie them together. I want to say the master part.
Oh yeah.
Real quick,
Nate, you can talk, Nate.
Emperor. before we wrap up on the battle, I wanted to say,
and also him
the
calling him Darth.
intentional dialogue of Darth and Master when he stands over him and says, "Did you really think you could defeat me, Master?"
Yeah,
So-
Vader says that to Obi-Wan.
So intentional, because where do we pick up in the original series? He says, "Last I was but a learner," but now I am the master.
I am the master.
So they intentionally throw out the dialogue of him still calling him master, knowing that the next time we see him in the originals, he's telling him, "No, I was still, even in that moment, I was still but a learner."
And what does he
in that
call?
moment, now I'm the master.
Even then.
And what does he respond in A New Hope to that line? Only a master of evil, Darth. Darth, exactly what he calls him. I also just, again, the writing of this was so good. That dialogue of Obi-Wan's not going to finish him. He pities him. He's sad, but he's gotten the resolution he needs. He's gotten the closure, and he is no longer, he's talking to him as Anakin earlier. He's no longer giving this monster in front of him the respect of even using the name of his former brother, because that's not Anakin. He's goodbye, Darth. It just walks away. It's like that's not Anakin anymore. You're fully Darth Vader. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
I also like that when you were talking about closure, the 2 points of view between Anakin and Vader, he essentially gets, like, if you take it that way, he essentially gets closure from both.
Yeah.
From Anakin and Vader. He gets the closure from Anakin saying, you know, what's the line? I'm not your failure.
Yeah, he says, I am not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
If that is Anakin coming through, what's left of Anakin's soul coming through, he's getting closure from Anakin by saying, I'm not your failure. It was not your fault that I turned to the dark side. And then Vader, he gets closure by Vader confirming that Anakin is dead.
Yeah.
So he gets closure on both ends, and that's when he's like, all right, I'm free. I'm no longer going to be left living and hiding, living with this guilt, this burden of having to confront and leave Anakin the way we did on Mustafar, and also have the guilt of feeling like what I did and training him and raising him led to him being on the dark side. It was none of that.
And Anakin's more free, and Vader is more slave.
Yep.
He's more a servant than he felt like.
Yeah,
he doesn't have the freedom to pursue his other interests. I
love so that Emperor scene. I love that going back like a week or two. We were talking about, well, there's only an episode left. There's only 2 episodes left when we were doing our podcast, and we were like, well, at the time it felt like there's a lot of questions. As much as I love the show, we're like, there's a lot of questions that I'm like wondering. When's this ultimate confrontation coming? This rematch of the century? We think that's coming. What's going to happen? At the time, we had no answers on Reva's backstory, really. And we're like, are they going to answer why Reva knows? And again, we got a lot of that last week. But some of the questions that we had were, speculative questions we had was also, would the Emperor show up from our podcast standpoint? It was like, is the Emperor going to show up? Check. But also, I hadn't thought the big thing that we were talking about a lot, and we kind of beginning of us speculating about the Obi-Wan series, was what possible scenario could happen that would cause these guys who Vader hates him so much, and we know what happens when they see each other again, and we know that Obi has this guilt. How could they possibly have another interaction? We know neither of them die. And then we start speculating, does one of them think the other dies or is there a mutual thing where they know, like, this is kind of it, and then we'll see you down the road? What could possibly happen? And this is another Deborah Chow and the writers, brilliant, whoever came up with the specific idea. It was another one that was like, dang, how did I not think of that? How about the Emperor literally threatens Vader?
Yeah.
He threatens, I mean, the dialogue there too, if he says it in the most Emperor way, which let's also talk about how the Emperor looked like Return of the Jedi Emperor, which is just my favorite looking Emperor. It's so good. There's still the prosthetics and the makeup, but it's not over the top at all. He doesn't look like just some crazy monster. He's supposed to look like an evil old man wizard Emperor. Like, he looked great. But the way he's calm and talking to him, action, and he's talking to him, and he starts talking about his
your personal feelings,
get in the way,
right.
and they're talking. Yeah, I almost went Grand Inquisitor there. Your feelings in the gutter. No, the least of us.
Wonders,
But
the
right.
From our perspective, we cut into the scene, and Vader is already kind of talking about how this is how I'm going to get. We need to. All these systems, or he's gonna go. We need to smoke him out. We need to do this. We need to find him. And the Emperor is like looking at him, like basically like you've lost you're obsessed with this. Like, we have a bigger plan here. At the Emperor's perspective, Obi-Wan's important. He's trying to rule the galaxy. This is important, and yes, he's a threat to us.
If he gets in our way,
he's been out there. If he gets in our way, we'll do it.
Yeah.
But we're not putting all of our resources in Vader. He notices because the Emperor is intuitive and knows what's going on, that you're not level-headed here. You are not at your best. This Obi-Wan thing is so in your brain.
It's consuming you too much.
It's consuming you. You're conflicted. You're broken. This is like it's connecting him too much. Maybe even feels like this is a pathway back to the light. We don't need that. We need you disconnected from that. But I love the way that it ends, where he talks about him thinking that your obsession with this might be too much, but then he gives the most Emperor esque line. I didn't even write the dialogue down, I don't think, but it was the quote of the threat, where he's basically like, if you can't, and the he's like, if you can't,
he doesn't finish it.
Yeah, but it's essentially he's like, if you can't move on from the past and separate your personal feelings, and then Vader gets the message
Kenobi
of
means nothing.
Then we will find someone who can. Is where the Emperor is going there. Of like, if you can't do this, you do realize I can totally replace you, and that's aligns with canon stuff we've seen about the Emperor actually being upset at. There's in some of the, I think it's either a book or one of the novels, the Emperor being upset at Obi-Wan because the Vader the Anakin / Vader that he inherited is damaged goods. And he's saying now too, like, you're not living up to my expectations, Lord Vader. And,
already.
Like, you do know, like, I could go find someone else. And then immediately Vader's, he means nothing. I serve only you, Master. And then that's the end of it.
Just
we
makes
don't
you
go
feel
after Obi-Wan until he
bad
comes back in play. Yeah. Yeah, it's Vader. Like you said, Vader's more of a slave than ever.
He is, yeah.
He just displayed how great he is at the Force, like his ability, all of this stuff. And yet the Emperor makes not even a raise of a voice, but a comment that's like, you are expendable. You realize this. And Vader's right back of, he means nothing.
Now,
this is great.
Yeah. That could be true, but it also,
could be not true.
Oh. We know it's not true. We know it's not true, right? He's saying it. I really think we can't see behind the mask, but I love the fact that Obi-Wan bested him so clearly this time. I mean, not easily, but clearly had him. That there's got to be a little bit of hesitation on Vader's part to not lose again. There has to be in there, because we know fear and the dark side live together hand in hand. I mean, there has to be some, like, I don't know about this anymore.
Yeah,
I hate him and I want him to die, but
also, I'm going through a lot facing this guy. Each time I come away facing Obi-Wan, I end up worse than the time before.
Well, you know what else I thought about? Because we had this. I was talking. We were watching with family here, and so he buries him under the rocks, right? And they were like, somebody made the point, and I thought it was valid. Oh, like that's going to kill Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I was like, well, what would he do? He couldn't beat him with the saber. He figured that out. I'm not winning this with my lightsaber. What am I going to do? Pull the rocks back off and pull out my saber again and be on the defense? So I think dead or alive, Vader was pleased to walk away and assume I got him. I'm done.
Sure.
I'm done.
Sure.
Because what would he? I mean, how else would he finish? He literally crushed him with rocks.
Yeah, with boulders. Yeah.
Right. So, and because, in our mind, we're watching this. Obi-Wan Kenobi can't be dead. We know that. Vader doesn't. There's no reason why he wouldn't be dead. But Vader doesn't know. Vader hasn't seen 4, 5, and 6.
He doesn't know that we know that neither of them die in this. Yeah.
Exactly. This isn't a moral. This isn't like a cinematic universe where the heroes live. Why wouldn't he be dead? He crushed. I literally watched the rock fall on his head, and then piled rocks on top of him.
Yeah.
So it totally makes sense that he would be dead. And what would he do how would he check? You're going to pull him off and let him escape? You're going to stand there?
Yeah.
I mean,
He pulls
it
off.
Makes a lot of sense to me why that would be the end.
He pulls off the boulders and he's like,
"Oh,
this looks like Obi-Wan's hair on this," and then it's looking. It's like he's a squash bug.
He could have added more rocks. I guess he could have done that.
Yeah.
I want to.
From our perspective, watching it, it felt like, but in the moment, that totally
in the moment makes sense as far as
finished.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I want to address the Joseph's comment here. We got. I felt he got his. Yeah, what's going on? I felt he got his power back kind of fast, like just in a couple days. I like this. To be honest, I agree to an extent. I think it was a quick turnaround. And I think I kind of saw it that way until I thought more about what Qui-Gon said. And it's kind of a little bit of what I was touching on earlier. I think it was all a mental state. I think he struggled so much with the Force because, kind of like Qui-Gon said, you weren't ready to see. You weren't in the mental state to get the closure that, like, once you got the closure, once you kind of got out of the funk you were in, then you were able to realize and rechannel some of that strength. And knowing that he was such a strong Jedi in the past, I would assume, he's suppressed his feelings for a long time. And it did show that he was very weak at the beginning of the series. But once he's able to get in that mental state, and might be more so like riding a bike, like you're kind of able to get it back quicker. Maybe. I don't know. This is kind of just my headcanon, I guess. But that's kind of how I took it, and especially when I heard Qui-Gon's message about you weren't ready. I don't know if you guys took it that way. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are. If you thought it was maybe too fast in the series, maybe it was. I don't know.
So I think I took it. I think it's a great question. I think I took it pretty similar to what you just said, Nate. I think that it's not like he is learning new Force powers. He's not Luke training in Dagobah, who learns pretty quickly.
Who learns pretty quick,
and
goes from zero training to
who on one trip with the Millennium Falcon starts using a lightsaber and blocking the the blast with the shield down and everything with the helmet on. That happens pretty quick. But the main thing, and I think that goes all the way back to A New Hope, what Obi-Wan, what old Ben at that time is trying to show him is that it's not about us building up your skill as much as it is you getting more in tune with the Force. And I think that while I do think there's skill involved with actual combat and like lightsaber training and fighting and all of that stuff, because they talk about how Anakin ranks versus Mace Windu as a swordsman and all of that, like there's actual skill involved.
I mean, look how strong Luke was after he turned himself off from the Force for a long time.
Yeah. So
he came back and we saw the strongest Force move we've ever seen.
So what I was getting at there too is I think that with Obi-Wan getting his confidence back, not just in himself, but also in the Force, in the mission, him becoming the end of the series is the most in tune with the Force that we've seen Obi-Wan. When he can finally speak with Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon's like, I've always been here, Obi-Wan. Like, you just were not ready to see it. And so to me, I think you are right though. It feels like someone who's shaking off the rust. If Steph Curry didn't go shoot a basketball for a while, when he comes back, he's going to be a little rusty. But then you put in the reps, you get it back. It's not going to take a long time. It might take a long time before he's better than he was before. But when you're trying to get back something that you've already have in you, that you've already had, I think that it comes back faster than someone learning something who has never been there before.
That's
I think it comes back to that connection with the Force.
Yeah, that's all true. And I really think the continuous Force metaphor, lack of confidence can be debilitating. It can make you afraid to try anything. And we see him in 3, right? And all he's doing is running. But he's not only dealing with lack of confidence, he's dealing with the fact that I can't kill.
I'm not
Anakin.
the same guy.
I can't kill Anakin. I'm going to kill I can't do that.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of, he caught him by surprise for sure when he lifted him up and pulled the saber and threw him in the fire, and all of that happened really quickly. I actually believe this was more a lack of confidence than it was ability. Because, I mean, if we see a trajectory here, and it did happen kind of quickly, but chapter 5 showed saber abilities that I have never seen. I mean, we watched them in Attack of the Clones, fighting off all the laser blasts. Obi-Wan is standing face to face with 30 stormtroopers firing straight at him, and he is deflecting laser blasts. Just boop, 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 and it's like really remarkable. So that built confidence, and that I think it was a confidence thing.
I think part of it too is fighting with a purpose. Fighting with a purpose too, like in sports, or in action movies, in war. These are realistic scenarios when your back's against the ropes. You find adrenaline, you find way more strength than you ever think you're physically capable of, because you're fighting with a purpose. You're fighting for someone else. And as soon as he channels and mentally starts thinking of, he's got all these rocks on him, and he starts thinking of Leia and Luke and why he's doing what he's doing, why he really needs to confront Vader, that's going to give him more strength than he could possibly think of, which is why I think we don't see that power until after we have that moment. Like we didn't see him have this strength where he's throwing all these rocks until after he has this moment of realizing he gets the conclusion from Vader that Anakin's gone and that it's not his fault. And then also realizing, why am I doing this? What's my purpose? And when he gets all that and he gets that, I think that's what helps kind of build him that strength to rechannel a lot of that.
It is quick. I talked to my
kids
about
this.
Movie making and filmmaking, it's all about bending our perception of time. You know, things take longer or shorter than we think. And it's, Rocky does it in one montage. Basically, he goes from almost dying to Drago to killing him. And it happens. That's weeks.
And part of that's realistic timing of, are you going to spend it also, are you going to spend 2-3 episodes showing a lot of that training? You could show some of it. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean,
in the case of Rocky,
in
the case of Rocky, because I'm a big fan of the Rocky franchise.
Right.
Apollo is killed. And they've literally tested and shown his actual brute strength, and have tested it and measured that this guy's fist can kill you. And Rocky he goes through this training and is literally taking punches in temple, but because he's more confident now, it doesn't kill him. Now, that doesn't necessarily add up scientific wise. You can be the most confident person in the world. You stand in front of a truck is going to kill you. That's just what happens.
That's true.
Give me a cheer, so it ended the Cold War, so I'm fine with it.
Yeah, that's right. If anything,
that's the most far-fetched thing in movie history, which is great too. Is that the Russian embassy is going Rocky.
I love Nobody's shot.
It'd be executed.
They would have nuked that place. It is kind of
love Rocky.
It is fast, right?
I mean, it is fast.
It felt like hearkening back to that Dagobah training. A couple of flips, lift the stone, boom.
Ray was fast. I mean,
like, we little backpack Yoda. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, honestly,
it is quick though.
Ray may have gotten. It's funny because people criticize Ray for like quick training or had a lot of abilities. Ray at least gets training with Leia and gets training with Luke on on Octo, and then later in Rise of Skywalker. Compared to a lot of the other Jedi, we haven't seen a ton of training sessions. I mean, we know Anakin and Obi-Wan actually grew up in the Jedi Temple and had the council and all that stuff. But compared to Luke, we don't see a lot of on-screen training.
Yeah,
I love it.
Other
questions?
Questions.
I got one.
We can rattle off a few. We don't have to spend a ton of time on some, but we can go through some answered questions.
I love
specifically in this episode.
Yeah. One of the big questions that we had coming in, and again, I want to reiterate that we don't think, and I think Uncle has nailed it. We are not, at least us, the Star Wars guys with our podcast, the way we like to view these, we don't go into every single episode and go, well, if this does not line up 10 out of 10 with every single word that was said, then this is dumb. Like, I think Deborah Chow even said in some interviews coming into this that there are some phrases and some dialogue from the original trilogy or from the prequels that have a little gray area. And so we're like, we want to do things that we feel like does not change the essence and the feeling of what George Lucas was going for. If we do something that feels like completely negates or completely backtracks or changes in a negative way what George Lucas meant by something, we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't touch it. We're trying to flesh things out, but doing it in a direction. And I think that one thing they did great that I was going to get at here too is, and there's so many things they did great in the series, but I love the last encounter, the last interaction between Bail and Brea Organa with Obi-Wan and little Leia and Lola. Don't forget Lola, she puts Lola in. She puts Lola in the holster, by the way, which is adorable. But when he's talking with her, and I love that they included the dialogue of, I didn't write down this quote. I wrote down some quotes, but some of the best ones I didn't write down. I forgot. But essentially, don't let people know the connection between us. Like, this has to stay. Yeah. This has to stay hidden because it'd be dangerous for both of us, which makes so much sense now because we've even said before, like,
help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Why in the help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi did we get you serve my father in the Clone Wars? Well, that's public record. I mean, Reva found it in the archives. Like, that's something that people would know. So that's fine. But you don't go, hey, remember how you're a secret Jedi who helped me and saved me and this? Because then people go, well, why is she so important? Why did Obi-Wan go to her? And I love that he said that. Perhaps I'll see you again if I'm a tired, you need the help of a tired old man.
Get some sleep.
I think that because that makes, now when I see that, I'm like, that makes a whole lot of sense. Not saying that they had to answer that, but it just would have been one of those things where I would just have to accept that, like, well, just like it's maybe doesn't line up 10 out of 10 that she would console Luke after Obi-Wan's loss when now we know her history with Obi-Wan. Yeah. This wouldn't have been like a big deal breaker, but now it does add a little bit of like, oh, that actually makes sense and did so in a very clever way of, of course, we actually wouldn't want people to know our history. So I just thought that was great. I love they included that.
I mean, other quick ones we kind of touched on a little bit, but just to highlight the questions that were answered, why he calls him Darth. He gets closure and understanding that Anakin's completely gone. And he's like, all right, well, you're Darth Vader, then you're Darth. Anakin's gone. So we got that.
I wish he would have said, I wish the Darth thing, and Uncle, you like this too. I wish he would have been, goodbye, Darth. Which is your first name, by the way. Those are our t-shirts which is gonna be Darth, and then on the back, which is your first name.
That's great.
Not my Kathy.
Oh no, you didn't.
But also the master thing we touched on earlier. Master, and how he later then says, I was Berlin, and now I am the master.
Yeah, people had questions about that after their interaction in part 3 of, so far everything we've seen from Vader seems like he's the master and not Obi-Wan. How is that gonna? Well, because we see it, we shouldn't rush to conclusions. Wait until the actual conclusion of the series.
I don't know why. I don't know. That's like Christopher Walken. I don't know why.
I don't know why.
Obi-Wan, baby. I didn't even consider that Obi-Wan would win. Why didn't I?
I didn't either. I didn't either. I thought,
like, weird.
How's he gonna lose?
I'm watching it thinking,
how's he get away?
Because we have Vader in our mind as this unstoppable Frankenstein.
Yeah,
but it totally makes sense. He bested Anakin. Why wouldn't he best? At his best.
Yeah.
I mean, not at his best.
It was surprising to me too.
But
it made it so delightful that we didn't know, even though we knew that neither of them died. We didn't know how this fight went. And so the whole time Vader does something really cool. And I'm like, oh, dang, it's not. And like, I know Obi-Wan's not going to die, but I'm like, gosh, you don't want to mess
How's
with
it get
Vader.
out of
And then all of a sudden Obi-Wan, and I'm like,
Oh,
he's more powerful.
man.
He's gonna win. And like it was shocking, even
It
though we
was.
know that neither
It
of them
was.
died. It was shocking to me, and I'm like, I did not expect that he would best
Did
him
you?
like that.
Did you feel? I felt pity. I felt pity.
Dude,
I
I
had
rewatched
the
this.
same feeling I had in 6 when he's struggling to breathe and he destroys. I was like,
Yes.
no,
The same
no.
sound too, by the way. They use the
Obi-Wan,
same
no,
sound
no,
effect.
Obi-Wan, don't. I was just.
I know. And I
to
specifically
watch.
watched that moment, that fight, probably like 8 times today. And I could pinpoint exactly the moment where I started feeling that way. Your first instant is he starts smashing the chest plate and you start hearing a little bit of wheezing. But then when I really felt that way was after Vader swipes through and misses and Obi-Wan slices his back and Vader actually falls. He falls to his knees and you hear like the yell. That's when the moment I remember even.
And then you
thinking
hear
the last time I watched it.
You hear the Vader
I actually
breathing
feel
the exact
bad for
same
Darth
sound
Vader.
too. Yeah,
That's the
you're
moment
like, he's
right
done.
there. I'm like,
You're,
wow,
whoa.
it's so sad. It's just such like his whole fall is just the most tragic thing in cinema history. But then rewatching it and seeing more of the story, more of these different moments where you just feel bad for him over and over and over, even though he's the worst person ever.
The tragedy of Darth Vader. It really is.
It really is. So like you see this, you know
Darth
how bad he
Plagueis
is,
wasn't that
like,
tragic. Yeah.
No.
If you look at it, Darth Plagueis wasn't that tragic.
Forever.
He learned to live forever, and before he could pull the trigger, his weasel of an apprentice killed him in his sleep. That's kind of just part of being part of the rule of 2. Like that's you know that you will be killed or you will kill your apprentice.
You can't sleep. But no, I mean, that was the moment when he slices his back and he falls to his knees and you hear him call out that I'm like, that is where I was,
and
man,
no
I feel so bad. Feel so bad.
No one knows that happened except Vader and Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's going to tell it. He's not going to tell that story. That's not the story he's telling anybody.
Yeah.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
What do you think Obi-Wan tells? Just for fun. I'm just thinking when he knows like Roken, these guys. Now again, he probably doesn't.
Like what does he tell like Bail? What's he tell
when
Bail
he comes
Organa?
back, does he say, well, I kind of beat him. I kind of beat him as Anakin's
I think
dead.
Obi-Wan would say Anakin is dead.
Anakin's gone.
He's no more.
Yeah. I think they answered that question too of him.
Because if you're learning humility at the same time, how do you go back and say, yeah, I beat that guy. I beat him twice. I beat him twice.
It doesn't feel at all. And it doesn't feel like Anakin. It also doesn't feel like Obi-Wan takes pride in what he just did at all.
No.
There's nothing about
like you said, he feels
his heart.
He feels bad.
He's heartbroken, just like he was heartbroken on Mustafar. And now there's different circumstances, but it's like, you have forced me into this. But now there's on Mustafar, there was no closure because it's like it's all happening at once. He goes and confronts him and can't even believe that he's turned, and now it all happens, turns into a fight.
Right.
This is years of sitting on this. Were there any moments for you all that made you tear up at all? I told you I cried a little bit.
Well, the whole thing.
Any specific moments that you can name, or name a few of them?
The biggest one for me was definitely when he's apologizing. You see Ewan McGregor's acting of how he sees Hayden Christensen through the mask for the first time and realizes, man, calls him Anakin. Who are you?
And he says, I'm sorry, Anakin. And he's got
for everything. Yeah.
For me, it was that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the ending one with Leia, but also
the Leia one.
I watched it again and I thought he's lying. When she says, come back, he says, I promise. And he was, if you watch it carefully, you can see the lie forming in his eyes and the smile comes on, but it's not real.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a subtle acting ability to tell a lie and let us know that you're lying, but not make it obvious. But if you watch it, you can see it's a lie.
No, for sure. Yeah.
He doesn't.
No, he believes I'm going to go. I'm going to confront him.
He's just trying to comfort her. Yeah.
I already tried to confront him last time, and it wasn't even close. I think he believes he's going to die, but he's going to pay. He's going to pay for his sins. Obi-Wan is going there to pay for all the things that he did.
He thinks at this point he thinks he deserves it. He's like,
justified. And then he's going to save them, and they
closure.
go on. And when somebody says, "I promise," it's a lie. And that I realized that he's lying to her. She doesn't know it, but we know that it is. And it was a goodbye. It wasn't, "I'll see you soon." It was, "This is it."
Yeah.
Amazing.
And the way they shoot that scene too, he's actually like, and the same thing too, actually at the very end, when will we see each other again? He's like, maybe someday. And he looks out the ship, and then he walks into like the cockpit area. He's just looking, and then you see him kind of fade in there. It's like, who knows when we'll see each other.
I wrote down those.
About this episode 4. They don't meet.
Yeah.
Leia and Obi-Wan don't spend any time together because he's off. By the time they get her, he's off doing the tractor beam. So she sees I watched again. She sees him.
She sees that moment.
There's a little bit. There's no there's no recollection in that scene, but that's okay. But the point is, this is the last, as far as we know. We don't see anything in episode 4. They don't have an interaction. They don't talk. They don't. So if there's nothing that happens after this was the last time.
This is the last time, to our knowledge, until we find out anything else. It's the last time that they spent time together. Yeah. Probably last time talking to each other.
Yeah.
I love those quotes. That made me cry, Uncle. That made me tear up. When I said before that I didn't know your parents, Princess Leia Organa, you are wise, discerning, kind-hearted. These are the qualities that come from your mother. But you're also passionate and fearless, forthright, and these are gifts of your father. Both were exceptional people who bore an exceptional daughter. And he's looking at her just he couldn't be prouder of her, because he's like, your parents, you have no idea how proud. You're both of them. You're the best.
And again, he was only able to have that conversation after he realized the Anakin I knew is no longer, he actually was these things. He had these good qualities, and now he's gone.
Anakin still has those things, but Anakin is dead.
Yeah.
Can we also say that as brilliant as much as we've known of Leia, I've never, ever once thought specifically about, oh yeah, she gets this from Anakin. I just never thought about that as far as much as we know of Leia. I've never, I always, I mean, most of the time I do think of like, oh, she's Vader's daughter. You think of, she mentions her mother, and then you kind of just compare mother-daughter a lot of times. But I love that they go down the line and say, just like, also, these are
the things.
This is what he's talking when he talks to Luke about Luke's father being a great warrior, and also a good friend. Like, this is what he's getting at, is like, before this darkness and before this fear and everything consumed him, these are the things that I admired about him. But these things were such. This is the young Anakin I knew, who was fearless. We talked about him in the Clone Wars, especially. All three of us have seen the Clone Wars series, where he would not accept that any person is expendable. Like, it doesn't matter. No. I'm sorry, Master Windu. I don't accept that. I don't accept that it's not worth the risk to go save this one person.
We watched the episode the other day where Plo Koon and a couple of the clones are stranded after that. And
on the ship.
In space. And Anakin says to the council, "Okay, we won't do anything." And Ahsoka gets angry. And then they get in the ship and they fly out. And they say,
"I love it."
Yes, he's not going to let him go. It's like that's what he tells her. He said, "We're not going to let him go, but there's a way to do this within the council."
And he jokes with Ahsoka all the time about how you're a little bit too much like me, because you would do the same thing I would do.
That's right.
Just do it anyway. Right. Yeah. There's a couple things. There's two things I want to touch on maybe before we wrap up. We don't have to spend a ton of time on it. But
there's a big thing we haven't talked about at all, too. We haven't mentioned Reva at all.
True.
We have to talk about Reva.
Well, I guess there's a lot then. We'll do that.
We don't have to spend a ton of time on it, but
Reva's conclusion. Let's do that real quick. What did you guys think of her redemption? Did you guys see it coming? I know there's been a lot of speculation of her making a turn to the light side, but were you thinking for sure that was pretty much set in stone at this point after the last episode, or what?
It was when she got to Tatooine. We know. I mean, given what we know of the characters, we know if she's going to face off with Beru and Owen, they're not going to die.
You're not going to die.
They're going to shoot her dead, which doesn't make sense.
Which Beru
Luke's
tries. Beru
close.
tries. Beru is packing.
I actually thought it was going to come back and Obi-Wan was going to come and kill her.
I thought so too.
I was a little surprised. It totally makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. She saw herself becoming Vader.
She's going to carry out. She's going to go to the point of killing younglings, just like she's angry. Yeah. So
I thought the parallel.
I felt that would have been unrealistic. Yeah.
I love the parallel between her and Anakin.
That's great.
How they got to the same point, and she makes a different decision, and she doesn't choose. And while she did she did some horrible things that led her to that. The difference is, and I love that it's Obi-Wan who's talking to her. Who knows better when she says, "Have I become him?" And says, by the way, can we just talk about how Moses Ingram's acting, who some people were critical of early on, and all this stuff?
She's great.
What were they critical
Grand
of?
Slam. Some people in the early episodes
thought she was her character
a little
was
one note or a little like thought she was kind of a little one note or a little, I don't know. Yeah. She showed off her acting chops and then some in the last couple of episodes, but in this too, with the tears down her face, and I thought her acting was so good. I thought she was great throughout, but especially when she's wrecked. I love the way they shot where she pulls up the lightsaber and it's flashing between young Luke and herself laying there. And then she is thinking of herself or Anakin and Vader. And is she in this, the parallel is until now you become the very thing you swore to destroy. Like your life has been getting revenge on the person who you are about to become. Like you are about to go down this road.
Yeah.
It's a lesson in the path of the dark side.
Yeah. It's Luke looking at Vader.
It is.
It's Luke looking at Vader.
It is. It is Luke looking at Vader. He's about
looking
to
at Vader. Am I about to become the same thing? No, I'm going to show mercy.
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I'm a Jedi, like my father before me.
Yeah, so it's just like that.
So be it, Reva.
No, I thought it totally made sense.
Great.
Totally made sense.
I'm interested to see where I know there's been some rumors of a potential Reva spinoff show, or I'm very interested in what does
I could see her paying
with the path. Idea.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I have a season 2 idea.
Or are you pitching this?
Wait.
Are you pitching this and trying to get some money out of it?
No. Well, me and Kathy are talking.
We'll dive
Kathy's
into this
watching.
You had it teed up already.
I was ready. This was one of my topics I was going to bring up was season 2 predictions or season 2. It's not.
We should say this is not confirmed that this is happening at all, but just people are speculating if we did.
Your pitch, I guess, for something you could see happening.
Actually, should clarify. It could be season 2. I actually think it could tie into
season
the
3
Ahsoka series.
Oh. Woo.
Could tie into to some Ahsoka stuff maybe later on. Well, I'm just wondering if there are adventures where Obi-Wan goes off and partners with other Jedi in other parts of the galaxy to fight other enemies. Rather than just stay on Tatooine, maybe he goes off and
he feels like there could be some Quinlan. Some Quinlan Voss out there.
I think they teed up the whole the path thing, I think that's an opportunity to dive into.
That was it. Here was my thought. Why couldn't, and we've heard some speculation about this, why couldn't season 2 be his continuing journey to understand how to become a Force ghost and his training on Dagobah with Yoda?
I agree.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
Qui-Gon's quote. I love Master Qui-Gon. Well, it took you long enough. By the way, I love just
his voice, man.
It's great.
I love seeing Liam Neeson. The whole episode, I'm going, oh no, there's only a couple minutes left. It's because it's one of those things where I think we all knew Qui-Gon was coming because they kept setting it up over and over. But then it does get to like this amazing, and we'll talk about the emotional scene, the last scene between Obi-Wan and Owen, which thank goodness we got more Owen. I'm not saying it would have been bad if we didn't, but Joel Edgerton is as good as any actor out there. He's awesome. So more Owen stuff. But as it's playing off the Obi-Wan theme, I'm like, don't you dare don't fade to black on me. don't you fade to black. I'm waiting to see this Qui-Gon. And then when they start, it starts appearing, and I'm like, here it is. And then I also was just laughing. I saw people on the internet said, well, Qui-Gon Liam Neeson pulled an Andrew Garfield on us. He went so out of.
He went so far. I just stick to cinema. I don't do TV
I don't really
series.
do that streaming stuff, the small screen stuff. I'm kind of a big picture snob guy myself. Like, Liam, you dog, you lied to us
on purpose.
I love it.
I was always him.
But I do love these. Says, come on, we've got a ways to go. You're like, oh, where are they going? Where are they going?
Yeah.
It was nice seeing. It was nice seeing that, and it was.
We got more Roken story too. Roken's gonna step into something.
Yeah, great. I think so
love
too. Roken.
The actor tweeted something today too and said, "I need more Star Wars." So I was like, to watch or to be in? Because let's go.
Nate, you know the actor O'Shea Jackson Jr. You know who his dad is, right? Have we talked about this on the podcast? Ice Cube.
Ice Cube.
Oh, really?
That's Ice Cube's son.
I didn't know that.
He was great. Apparently, he's a massive Star Wars fan. Like, he tweets out a bunch of stuff about.
I feel like you gotta be.
Yeah. He was good.
It was great.
There was one more thing I wanted to touch on, and I think it's interesting. A quote from was it Kathleen Kennedy maybe, who said something about how they maybe rewrote a little bit of the ending of the script to make it a little more hopeful than initially they had intended. Do you guys remember?
I think they came out before the show started.
I don't think it was major changes, but maybe some dialogue or something that they touched on or tweaked to make it end a little bit more hopeful, because that again is the message of Star Wars. And the more I thought about that, I thought, it does end in a hopeful way, because you get resolution. Obi-Wan gets closure, but it's the only hopeful perspective really is coming from Obi-Wan and the fact that he got closure, because the galaxy as a whole is not left in a hopeful state. Because what does Bale even say? How does the whole thing end? Bale says the Empire is growing stronger and bolder. And then
he said, I fear for Leia's future.
Yeah. And then Obi-Wan immediately turns to Leia and talks about how we need to stay hidden. We can't let them find. So it's like, that is not hopeful at all.
And we also
Obviously,
know when
know where
comes
it goes.
Of age, everything we saw at the end of that show is gone. They destroy the whole planet.
Yeah.
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 Lose all that.
That is sad when we know what Bale and Brea and
that's the one thing.
The only good thing there. The only good thing there. No, this might be crossing that line. I was gonna say is that maybe her snot-nosed cousin was taking a nice little trip over there at the wrong time.
Cousin.
Man. But yeah, I mean, obviously,
Malfoy-like cousin. Yeah.
From the perspective of the viewer, you end a little more hopeful, because we feel like Obi-Wan is hopeful in the sense that he and Reva are free, that he himself is free mentally, he's free physically, that he's no longer really worried about Vader hunting him down. He doesn't know for sure that he won't, but he feels comfortable in the fact that I can handle myself. And also mentally in the state of I'm free in a sense that I no longer feel the burden of caring what happened to Anakin. So in a sense,
he's emotionally ready to pick up Luke.
Yes,
when he's ready.
And to keep moving forward and not hide in the shadows, taking the lessons that Leia taught him to just, you have to be out there. We have to trust people. We have to continue fighting the good fight. We can't just sit around and not do anything.
Yeah. How about that final Obi-Wan and Owen encounter?
Oh man, do you want to meet him?
He's looking at the shuttle and he wants to give it to him, the Skyhopper, and all of a sudden he comes down there on the Eopie. And I like that. This is one thing that I hadn't thought of either, that I love that they went this route. The way I've always kind of viewed A New Hope, and for right or for wrong, I think most of us grew up kind of thinking, dang, Uncle Owen's kind of an old grouch, right? Like he's hating on Obi-Wan. Doesn't feel like there's any love lost between those two, as far as it feels like they are adversaries. Where now at the end of this, it feels very much like he respects Obi-Wan, but also just doesn't want Luke to get a part of that life, which is a different thing. Is like protecting Luke from the truth until he's ready. That wizard's just a crazy old man.
He respects that he's watching him from afar, but wants him to stay afar, not
because in this episode, when he's in that last moment, he first says like, "Thought you're gonna keep your distance or stay away," or whatever he says, and he's like, "I will," and then they talk, but then it's like a handshake and like they're talking, and then Obi-Wan's happy of a job well done, and he just sees Luke off in the distance, and Obi-Wan's like, "I'm not gonna press it." He's like, "You were right. He needs to be a boy," and tells him how he just needs to grow up. He needs. Leia's done enough adventure for all of us. Let's keep Luke here playing in the sand as long as possible.
Yep.
And then when he turns, Owen doesn't have to do this, but Ben, would you like to meet him? And then I didn't get emotional like I was going to tear, but I had the biggest grin on my face of like man, he earned it. Let him meet Luke real quick. And it also makes sense how when we see Luke and he knows who Ben Kenobi is. He didn't know the history of him being a Jedi and all of this stuff, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, but he knows who is. And then the most earned line, Obi-Wan walks up there, and what does he say to Luke? "Hello there." It's so good. He delivers a hello there.
It was a little more Alec Guinness too.
It was his one and only of the whole season too, which is perfect because they almost did it. They almost did it in the Freck episode, Nate. You remember when he's come and she's like, "Say hi, Father. Say hello, Father. Hello." And you're like, "Oh, he almost did it. He almost did it. He wasn't ready for it." It was the same episode. It was the episode when he was like, "Oh, shoot. I knew I shouldn't have trusted them, Leia. Not all people are good, Leia." This is when he was this is when he was cranky.
Yeah. I do have a new appreciation for Owen. But you know what happens is, depending on what you do for a living, imagine Owen, who is a farmer, and your son, who you know is the son of a Jedi, and Obi-Wan Kenobi is a Jedi and have done adventures and saved the galaxy and fought off villains, and as your son grows, as Luke grows, there's tension there because Luke thinks that being a farmer is a waste of time. He thinks it's beneath him. He thinks
it's holding him back.
Everything.
Yeah.
But Owen, that's what he's done his whole life. That's what he's done his whole life. So Luke is continually saying, "Owen, you're wasting. This is a wasted life. This is boring. This is a terrible way to live." But this is what Owen. This is his whole life.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of resentment as time goes by that I think Owen feels less than. He always has struggled with his place in this. Where I'm not a Jedi. I'm not a powerful. So when
the time comes, I won't be the one training you.
That's right. When he was able to stand off against Reva, and find his place in this.
Yeah, I love that they defended it
so that it's I'm not just some weak, useless farmer. I can defend my own family.
Yeah,
and he does. So,
and I love that line, Uncle.
It's good. It's really good.
And that line too of Reva saying like, "You love him like he's your own." He goes, "He is our own." And I love it. He's like, "He is our own." Like,
he says, "What do you want?" Yeah,
and he's not. He's not his biological father, but we're connected by blood. I mean, like he is our family, and now I am his father figure. Obviously, I am his dad. I am the one raising him. He is our own.
That's right. Owen is not beneath anybody. He's noble and honorable and good, and in many ways, Anakin superior. I mean, he was way more selfless than a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I'm glad Owen got his due in this.
Me too.
It's good.
Strong.
Good.
Going back to the first episode, the way he stands up and holds his ground when Reva confronts him in the street and tries to intimidate him in front of everyone.
Exactly.
Like, this is not someone who backs down easy. I love that he's not some scared Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru who are just like, we just don't want to be a part of the galaxy. He's like, I stand my ground. And that's also going to butt heads with Obi-Wan some because I'm not a pushover. If I don't think my son should go down this road, he's not going down this road. And Obi-Wan at the time too is like, "Oh, and this is the only thing that's keeping me alive." Like he's got no hope. I thought I was doing this mission. I don't even believe in that. Oh, and he's like, when the time comes, he must be trained. Like, why else am I even here? But yeah, seeing that come full circle where there's some respect there at the end too, that I love. That's like, this is a mutual agreement now to keep our distance because we think it's best for him, but it's not. You just kicked me off. It's not me, Obi-Wan, being kicked off of Uncle Owen's property for the last time. And he's like, just get out of here. It's not that, which I loved seeing that. And I think when I watch New Hope, I'll feel that.
Obi-Wan is acknowledging that living this life is not beneath, Luke. Somehow Jedi aren't up here and farmers are down here. That's not real.
Yeah.
No.
What Owen is doing is valuable and good and noble, and that's a great life. There's nothing wrong with that. Before, Obi-Wan thought, well, that's way beneath Luke is better than that. And
you're holding him back to all that.
Like, you're looking down on us because we're farmers. It's not how it should be. And Obi-Wan figured it out. You're right. It's not.
You're right. He needs to be a boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought this episode wrapped up the series perfectly. I mean, I couldn't have asked for more. Overall, I really want to go watch and just binge the entire show.
I'd love to watch this, like a 3.5 hour
and just watch
movie.
It all and just kind of feel like that, seeing it all at once. I'd love to do that.
Are they going to put this in theaters?
I heard that, but who knows?
I heard that too. I don't know if it's just select, like maybe in Los Angeles or something.
Oh, maybe.
But
maybe if so,
I'll be there.
Yeah, man.
If so, let me know. But final little note I forgot to mention too that I love they did in this episode, and this is real quick, is they've done with Natalie Holt being the composer who's doing the music throughout, and then we have John Williams who did the new original. Yes. So I was gonna get as this episode is the only one, to my knowledge, that they've used some of the iconic original themes. So they had Leia's theme, which Vader, then blended into the Force theme.
Imperial March.
Because they had they had the Leia's theme, and then when he says "May the Force be with you," it goes into the Twin Sunsets, the Force theme, the da 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 da, and then we got the Imperial March at the end of that Emperor conversation, which also I think kind of sets the time. Even though we got Imperial March back also in Revenge of the Sith, I believe a little bit, it also sets the stage of this is the final scene that we get of Vader in this time period, or at least in this series. And this is Empire Vader now, like not Empires and Empire Strikes Back, but Empires. And this is the Empire we're introduced to. This is the Imperial Vader. He's officially, just like Obi-Wan has transitioned into Alec Guinness by the end of this journey. Obi-Wan or Vader has now transitioned into Vader, or close to the Vader that we get in Rogue One and A New Hope, and more of that by the end of it. Which
and that's a great transition, because this fall we may actually get more Vader in Andor.
I think possibly some Palpatine as well. There's a lot of Imperial Senate stuff.
I'm not
gonna have some baddies.
I mean, I'm not writing anything off. You know, I can't wait to get the split helmet Vader Funko Pop, because I know they better be coming out with that.
Yeah, man.
I saw someone comment that like each episode, Obi-Wan adds like a different article of clothing, like
for merchandise.
And so people were like, "There's gonna be like 7 different."
Well, this last episode,
like
the ending,
different figures and stuff. Yeah,
the ending of cloth. I saw a comparison is straight from the comic Obi-Wan.
It is with the goggles.
The goggles, but with the robe that doesn't have like the long sleeves. It's just the like tight robe vest almost with the hood and the goggles, and his normal kind of went back to his original tunic underneath. I thought, it's really cool. Straight from the comics, really cool.
Yeah. We'll go around one more time. Just final thoughts. I'm sure we'll do podcasts in the future about the show, but final thoughts on just we have wrapped Obi-Wan Kenobi. I can't believe we're actually done with the series for now, at least with this part of it. Final thoughts on just overall. What you guys think?
Overall, I just have all the emotions. I'm happy because I loved it, but I'm sad that it's over.
Yeah. For me, beautiful, poetic surprise that Leia drove the redemption brought Obi-Wan back.
Yeah.
Totally unexpected, and maybe the best vehicle I could have imagined. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
Great. And what a great there was a number of people that were great castings, but what a great casting for wasn't it Vivian Lear, the the child who plays her, the child actor.
Man, fantastic!
It was just I had no idea when we got the first glimpse of young Leia in that episode 1, in part 1 of this, that she was going to be a driving force of the show. Man. And she is the big surprise standout. Of course, we knew Ewan was going to be fantastic. We knew that whatever we got from Hayden was going to be awesome, because they wouldn't bring him back if they didn't have a great plan to use him and use him where we'd see his face and flashbacks. But the Leia thing was something I never saw, other than maybe I never saw that coming. And it was great writing. It was great acting. I thought they executed that so well. And just the emotional journey that this show has taken us on from, I feel like, especially we're guys who host a Star Wars podcast, we have a pretty good understanding, at least to our knowledge, of what is the character of Obi-Wan. Like throughout different stages of life, we feel like, oh, I kind of feel like I know who he is. What is the character of Leia? I feel like I kind of know who she is. And then I look back after this and I go, well, I had an idea, but I was looking at this, and there's this whole iceberg underneath the tip of what is Obi-Wan actually. I thought what he would be wrestling with, but what is, when we see him in A New Hope, what conversations, what closure does he have? And now when I look at Leia, it's like, when you see her, when I can't wait to watch A New Hope and see there's a little short for a stormtrooper, and just think like, now I'm not just looking at Carrie Fisher, I'm looking at the little girl grown up.
That's exactly
and
right.
Seeing that same spunk and that same, hey, I can rescue myself, but underneath that toughness and that outgoingness as far as getting the job done herself, and having that fearlessness, that she's also just the most compassionate. She is the one who puts her arm around Luke when it could be her who's sad that her planet, or that Obi-Wan, or you name it.
That's right.
She's the one who's looking out for others. Courage off the charts. I just I could not I don't think I could have wanted or expected or gotten anything better than what we got. It blew me away, not just this finale, but this series. I couldn't be happier with it. And if you ask me right now, it is currently my favorite of the Star Wars series of live action shows as a whole. And I love, that's nothing against Mando. I absolutely love Mando. I love Boba Fett. There's so much in Boba Fett I really love too, but this one moved me on an emotional level that I haven't felt yet.
I agree
to this extent. Yeah,
I agree.
Love it. This is one I'll be rewatching, I think, maybe more
over
than the others
and
too.
over and over. I mean, I'll be watching, even if I just skip to this fight, I'm gonna be watching that over and over and over.
Iconic things. Yeah.
So
it really does feel like a piece. I saw someone tweet it. This actually feels like I can't watch the Skywalker saga and leave this part out if I'm trying to.
It's a huge piece.
Mando's big. Mando's big. But if I'm trying to get the Skywalker saga, Mando is a veer to the side. I almost knocked my microphone over. Is a veer to the side, which is great. And it plays in the same sandbox with new characters, and there's ties to Clone Wars and all this stuff. And Solo is a tie to Han and everything. But as far as the through line of what is Star Wars, Obi-Wan has been there from the very first movie we've ever seen, the very first Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And he's always been a big character, but a background character or a side character. He's not necessarily in the background in the prequels, but
he's not Anakin. Really, he's not the main. Yeah.
In Phantom Menace, it's Anakin and Qui-Gon. Like Qui-Gon is definitely there more. And then obviously in episode 2 and episode 3, it's definitely Anakin's story, and Obi-Wan is there and it has a huge role, but it's all, how is he reacting to Anakin? How is he reacting to what Anakin's doing? We don't get a lot.
He's holding me back.
We don't get a lot of just Obi-Wan scene. We get Obi-Wan scenes, but it's not a lot of what is Obi-Wan going through. It's just Obi-Wan doing the mission, because Obi-Wan's always been steadfast. And now once you see this is a time to actually dive into this character that we know and love and feel like we know so well. But now I will just forever see him in this enriched light, that we know what he's been through. We know the closure. We know what Anakin has gone through even more now in this stage of his life. I love
I actually think that this Obi-Wan series has made me think. Now I might recommend somebody watch 1, 2, 3,
Yeah,
Obi-Wan
for sure.
Obi-Wan,
3.5.
Yes.
4,
That's
5,
it.
6.
Yeah.
It's a perfect bridge.
It really
There was
is.
a big
Well,
gap there where
you got to go Rogue One.
I couldn't get from 3 to 4 easily.
Yeah.
I think this, I mean, if they do another season, for sure. I think this bridges the gap between
It's the
fighting
perfect
style,
bridge.
between the imagery, between character development. I think all of those things move from 3 to 4 now. I think it would change the way I would. My recommendation before might change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Steven, we appreciate you tuning in. Thanks for the comment. I agree. This Obi-Wan was the best of Star Wars TV series. Listen, it may not be for everybody, but I definitely agree with you personally. I think it was my favorite live action Star Wars series, as a whole. Like I said before, I'd love to watch it all the way through and just kind of see if I feel any different going from episode to episode and watch it all at once. But I loved it. Loved the series. Love seeing the deep dives into these characters, seeing the headspace of Obi-Wan and Anakin, and it's just favorite series so far. I hope we get more. If we do get a season 2, I have a feeling. Again, it's all speculation. If we get a season 2, I have a feeling Vader will not be involved. I don't think he'll be involved in a season 2 if we get one. I think if we get Vader, it would be
go a different way.
I think if we get Vader again in a series, it may be his own. I don't see
an Obi-Wan Vader series.
I don't see an Obi-Wan Vader
like they really
again.
set this up perfectly to transition to A New Hope as far as where they left off.
And if they want to tell Obi-Wan or the path and diving in with training with Qui-Gon and Yoda,
there's a lot there.
There's a lot they can still mess with. They left the door open for a season 2. I just don't see that happening with Vader.
Quinlan Voss.
Yeah, Quinlan. They brought up Quinlan.
They did.
Again, it could be just a fun reference, but he at least was out there at the time that he came across the path. So there's a lot of different things, and based on what Kathy Kennedy has said too, it sounds like this was kind of our story for this, but also we are very much open to other continuing other stories with Obi-Wan. And I know Ewan's out there actually pining for it.
And Hayden.
I think we will.
Ewan and Hayden have both said they would love to continue the story of these characters.
They're both in a good position to do it from like acting movie standpoint. I think it'd be good.
Yeah.
Good for both of them.
And they're ending this series, whether you're not as big a fan of the series as we are, pretty much everyone, or at least most people I've seen, was even people that I just completely disagree with, that were like, oh, I didn't like the series as much. Some of them were like, but the finale was pretty awesome. So regardless of where you are on the spectrum, they're ending on a pretty strong note. Yeah.
Can you imagine if we got a Vader series, he and Palp just diving into the Force? And I don't know, man.
Ian McDermott just keeps thinking. Ian McDermott keeps thinking this has to be the last one, right?
Right.
Oh, I'm back again. Okay. Great.
Oh, I'm getting my own series. Oh, it's me and Darth Plagueis series. Oh, okay.
I love it.
No, I mean, obviously, I want these characters to continue. We'll see what happens. We got another comment here before we wrap up. I wish there was more to the Qui-Gon scene. Yeah, I think they teased enough, in which I kind of like that they left it open, because it allows for some speculation that maybe we'll get more of that into a season 2. Because we know that Liam Neeson is all for Star Wars and loves to come back. So I think they left it open intentionally in case, they want to do a season 2 and have Qui-Gon more involved. But yeah, he wasn't in it a whole lot. They definitely teased it throughout the series just to give him a little bit there at the end. That's true.
Man, what a show. What a series.
What a show.
Awesome.
Just
awesome.
Yep.
Well done.
So good. Well, any last comments before we close out here?
Just thrilled with what we got. I know a lot of times with how much content is out there, whether it's Marvel or Star Wars, or it's easy to, I mean, even with stuff that I really like. I mean, I like Marvel shows. It's easy to feel like, even with knowing that there's Andor coming up and there's Bad Batch, it's easy to feel like this was great. I felt kind of like this with Book of Boba Fett. Like, it was great. I loved it. When's Obi-Wan coming? That's kind of what I felt after Boba Fett. And
what are we supposed to do now until Andor comes out?
And I mean this in a very positive way too, of nothing against I'm so excited for Andor. Andor looks great, and I think it's shot very practically. I don't think there's a lot of volume stuff. From what I heard, they shot that in Europe, and it looks really fantastic. But this feels like one that I'm not going to necessarily, I don't feel like I'm going to be able to move on in a good way. I think like this one sticks with me a lot more than the others, where I think even a Mando, as much as I love Mando, I'd be lying if I've said that I've gone back and watched the whole season, season 1 and season 2 multiple times of Mando since its last. I've watched some episodes. I think I've watched it all the way through because I watched it once when it aired, and then again with my wife Abigail, getting her caught up. I think I've maybe seen it twice. I mean, I watched some of the episodes multiple times when they came out, but I haven't just been like, all right, I'm putting back on Mando from 1 and I'm going all the way through. I see me doing that with Obi-Wan a lot.
I'll rewatch the whole thing this weekend.
Yeah. Just from how much that is just on my heart, on my mind, as far as the way it connects. Not that every show has to connect to the larger films as much as this one does, but it feels like you got what a spoil of riches of great writing, great original story with the actors that we know that have played these characters that we've seen before, coming in now at the perfect age to represent these characters that bridge the gap with the most nostalgic movie of my lifetime, A New Hope, the first Star Wars movie I ever saw. It's connected to that. And I just think that even when these other shows come, I'm going to be so excited, and I hope they even exceed my expectations as well. And probably every few months or so, I'm going to rewatch Obi-Wan, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just love it.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate your support here for us at Star Wars Guys. It means a lot. If you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe and tell a friend about us at Star Wars Guys as we continue to grow the channel. Your support means a lot. Week? So
we're doing Sunday.
That's a great question. That's a great.
This is the fun part of the podcast where we hash out our plans live on air, which I always love. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
I do want to mention tomorrow night we're right back at it. We got a bonus episode this week. We got some special guests. If you guys follow them on YouTube, or TikTok, social media.
Is this 2 podcasts, our podcast and another podcast being connected in the Force?
It is.
What would you call that, Nate?
Well, they already claimed the name, but they got the dyad. So we're gonna be. We got some special.
Are we in studio, Nate? Me and you? Or are we doing double screen?
We might be doing double unless we can figure. We'll figure it out.
That's fine.
If you notice, Mike was not mentioned because he'll
be out.
I'm not gonna be there.
He'll be out. Work. But anyway, we got special guests. Darth Chaco, as if you've heard of him, he's got YouTube channel here for the High Ground podcast and stuff he's got on YouTube. He also is one of the Dyad in the Force podcast with Element 7, who are both of their names, Darth Chaco, Element 7. They're on TikTok as those usernames and other social medias, Twitter and things like that. We're going to get them on. They've been generous enough to join us tomorrow night to talk a little bit more Kenobi and some other things, some Star Wars Celebration. They both went, so we're going to pick their brain on their experience and things. So make sure to tune in. We'll be live tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central Time with those guys. So it's going to be a special bonus episode this week. We're really looking forward to having them on. So like I said, don't forget to like the video. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate the support here at Star Wars Guys. And as always, may the Force be with you.
Hello there.
I have always been here, Obi-Wan. You just were not able to see.
My name's Freck. It's nice to meet like-minded folk.
What is he proposing?
I love that Freck is Zach Braff from Scrubs.
So great.
Great.
All right, y'all.
What is he proposing? So good.
All right.